So, I'll call the meeting to order. It's Thursday morning, March 30th, and this is the Senate Agricultural Committee. This morning, to start with, we're going to be going over, we have Henry Pearl here with us. I thought Michael is coming.
He is.
He is not on the screen. I'm sorry to hold you folks up for a few minutes. Had rural development
Yeah, no problem.
and so we had to get through that. And Ellen Keeler was in before that, and talking about none other than the House bill.
Oh, exciting stuff. You want me in the?
Yes,
Hot
right
seat
up here, Representative. So, and we'll introduce ourselves, and you probably know us all, but for the record, we'll introduce ourselves.
Yeah, good morning, Henry Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Good morning, Irene Runner, Chittenden North, including Fairgrounds.
Ryan Campion, Bennington County.
I'm Rich Westman, from the district.
Yeah, and I'm Bobby Starr from Orleans County. And welcome to the Senate Ag Committee. So I see you folks have been busy and on the House side in Ag, and you want to give us highlights of
Sure.
the bill? Are you going to be the one, or you were the one that reported some of this?
I reported all of it, yeah. So yeah, for the record, Henry Pearl, House Ag. Yeah, I reported it. It's really not super riveting, but it's got a lot of different stuff in it. You guys have probably looked over it. But I'll just kind of go through it, highlight the key points, I guess, if that works, and then technical stuff is probably better
Michael.
left to the experts, but
Michael.
I'll try to answer whatever I can.
Yeah, and a little explanation of
Yep.
what you went through to get to where you ended up.
Yep.
And then we'll understand, the whole show.
Sure.
Go from there.
So the first two sections have to do with ag fairs. This was a result of, I think it was an ask from the probably from Jackie to the fair association there. There was a issue accidentally, the rule piece, the law got taken out of was it repealed by accident in a separate technical boards and commissions bill. So things were still happening, the fairs were still being funded, but I think Steve maybe caught it over at the agency, but basically they were still getting funded, but there was actually no legal, they didn't have to get funded. So this was a cleanup there to make
You
sure that
mean somebody's messed up?
somebody missed something somewhere, which is hard to believe.
Couldn't have
but-
been here in the legislature.
No. So this was just
Getting
back in, and there was a little bit of cleanup. We worked through some of the criteria that's set up in there for what is an agricultural fair and who gets funded, because there's a couple funky things in it. And you may hear from Steve Collier. He said it's still, the language is a little weird, messy in there. It's a little confusing, but I think we were trying to maybe try to clarify it a little bit. And so the first section is just a little bit of clarity there, and section 2 is just making that provision so that kind of covering ourselves to make sure that if we did anything, we're not gonna mess up anybody that's already getting funding. Like, it's basically saying that there's kind of a grandfather. If you've been receiving funding before, you're still gonna be able to get it. Like, there's a couple nuances there. I think the Guilford Fair is only a 2-day fair, and the language says that you got to be a 3-day fair. And there's some question about the farm show, a lot of it goes off of attendance and, you know, with COVID and stuff, there was some fairs that weren't, or things that weren't operating, and we wanted to just make sure that anybody that had received state funding in the past or applied for these grants would still be able to. There's still a couple things that are a little tricky there because some of the structure is based on attendance, and so how do you get those numbers?
And that's gonna vary from
Exactly.
year to year on the weather, you
Yeah.
know, if you get a 2-day event and it rains both days.
Exactly.
Kind of not in
Yeah.
good shape.
And then,
And can I just jump in? Page 4 at the top there, the first 3 lines, you just mentioned the 24 hours, you know, 3 consecutive days, 8 hours a day. Does that capture all of the fairs except Guilford?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, and we wanted to make sure that if there was at any point like a new, you know, if there was a new fair, that it met these.
They knew going in.
Yeah, exactly, that it needed to be kind of worth the funding, essentially. But, and then section 3, that was just a technical, we replaced meat cutting with meat processing, that's just a cleanup thing. Section 4 had to do with the weights and measures division. So there was some concern there that there's just a lot of things that have to get inspected, you know, everything from deli scales to gas pumps, and there's just so many things that have to be inspected that there's a capacity issue, and they're struggling to keep up with that, because right now it's everything has to be inspected yearly. And they wanted a little discretion to say that there was a few things that probably didn't need to be inspected every year, and so we extended that to 2 years, just giving them some flexibility. And they testified that there was really no concern that, you know, this would be a consumer protection issue at all. Like there are just some things that really don't need to be checked that often.
What about, do you have they talked with us, I think, about EV testing.
Yeah.
Is that in here?
There was nothing, I don't think there was anything that specifically
Is that in our bill then?
went into that, I don't think.
Do you remember?
Yeah,
They
there's
were
nothing
gonna
in the one.
Start checking
Yeah.
the meters to be sure that you
Yeah.
put your car in for.
I remember hearing about it, but I don't think there was anything.
I'm almost sure that there's nothing in 115.
I think it's in the T bill or the transportation Senate miscellaneous bill for some reason.
Isn't weights and measures the
Yeah.
ones that are measuring it?
Yes, but I just remember him testifying in Senate transportation and talking about that. That's what makes me think it's in there.
Okay.
Because it's not in 115.
We're just, Michael, talking about the EV testing of,
Oh, yeah, the fee for that?
yeah, for the ag department.
Yeah, that's not in this bill, that's in, I think it's a DMV bill, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And
And then section 6 is to do with branding. That was basically the agency said, we're not doing this anymore. So as it stands right now, they have an obligation to register brands. And I think they said they've had like 3 over the last 10 years of people that wanted to register a brand. And so the cost of basically running that program, it's not paying for itself and nobody's doing it. And I had talked to Steve about it, and there's really this doesn't say that people can't brand their animals, or it doesn't, it's not anything like that. It's just taking away the program within the agency of verifying that that's a distinct individual brand. You know, it's kind of a program that's obsolete, and there just wasn't a feel that there was any need for it. And there was a little bit of thought that, you know, that I'm not sure the agency really wants to be a part of branding. There's some animal welfare concerns there, and so they were just getting rid of that. But it was not saying that you can't brand or taking away, and it's not a legal form of identification that's needed for.
so
Yeah, you need your tags and stuff. So it was obsolete So pulling that out. Then the next few sections, 6 through 16, all have to do with bees, apiaries. This all came just from more trying to give the agency a little better ability to track the flow and keep track of apiaries and bee movement in and out of the state. Because there's, with things like varroa mites and
Did you
disease.
change that, where they have to register if they go out of state, or if they've been to certain states and come back? have
Yeah.
to-
So that was it used to be, there's one piece has to do with having to be, they used to have to be inspected every year. And now it's inspected 45 days prior to any sale. So we're trying to catch things before they actually move, because if you get inspected at, January 1st, let's say, and then you sell your bees in November, there's a lot that can happen in between there. So trying to catch the inspection closer to when bees may be moving so that we're not moving disease and parasites. And then, there was an exemption in there that if your bees were registered within the state, that you could move them in and out as long as they were within a certain range, I think. And I
Oh,
think,
yeah,
because there's people that are moving them, into New York or New Hampshire or Massachusetts, because obviously bees get moved quite a lot for the management, and trying to make it so that there needs to be a little bit more accountability, or just keeping track of that, just allowing the agency to keep track of it better. So it pulled that exemption out. Let's see. Oh, and then we changed the term hives to colonies, because hives is just the physical boxes.
Yeah.
And colonies encompasses more of the
It's
whole,
all-
the bees, the
yeah.
equipment, all that. Section 17 had to do with soil amendments. This was clarifying that any soil amendments that are regulated by the agency would include anything that's used to basically grow anything, even if it's not media, even if it's not soil. So think of hydroponics. Like if you're putting something into growing if you're using some sort of amendment in growing a food, this allows the agency to keep track of it, just making sure that it's safe and that people aren't misleading customers with something that's actually maybe not actually doing anything that they're doing. So the same process for anything else, just including hydroponics, because the way it was written before, it had to do with soil. 18 through 20 that was about nurseries and pet detection, kind of following the same theme as the apiaries and bees, trying to just get a little better hold on some of these invasives and disease and pests. So this was trying to get the tracking of plants and disease. So it amended the definition of nursery dealer to try to get anybody that was anybody that's dealing in plants essentially, or moving them around, or that way they're getting tracked and have to register and be licensed. So, and there was a little bit of concern there that we didn't want to get, make every person that goes and gets a plant, it doesn't affect like a homeowner or something like that. It's
people that buy and
for
resell.
commercial gain, and it has to be over $1,000. So if you're just, if you're somebody that mows a lawn for your neighbor and you plant a tree or something, it's not, there's a little bit of leeway there. But if you're going to Lowe's in New Hampshire and buying 20 trees and coming and planting them for people, the agency would like to know what you're doing, because we heard that there's a lot of plants and invasives out there that really aren't, that shouldn't be here, that nobody's keeping track of, and just trying to get a better handle on that, so we're not bringing more things in that are gonna be detrimental to, the landscape. Oh, and then there was there was a little bit in section 20 had to do with issuing orders. They wanted some cleanup in there for if there is a pest or disease found, and the agency needs to tell the nursery to basically stop the sale. They can provide a verbal issue as long as it's followed up within 7 days written. So that way, just be quicker, because if there's an issue, they want to be able to tell them immediately to stop selling. That's
For the
draft
stop
the
the
letter.
sale, right?
Does email count as a written warning or request?
Do you know? Yeah.
Okay.
And then 22 had to do with the repealing the requirement that agency compensate plant owners. So in law, it was that if there was something found, a disease or pest or something, and an agency said you have to destroy your stock, in law they were supposed to come to an agreement of a fair cost, and the agency would pay for it. There was no funds to do that, and it hasn't been happening. Like it's never really been a practice, and they wanted to take that out so that they weren't liable to pay for somebody's stuff if they were ordered to, because they just don't have the funds to do it. And I mean, there's kind of a idea there that if it's infested or if there's something wrong with it, it doesn't maybe have a value anyway, and it's kind of the idea of being for the greater good. You know, if you've got something that could hurt a bunch of other things, you're expected to destroy it, probably won't be compensated.
Did you take testimony from any horticulture folks in regards to this, or?
Don't believe so. I don't believe we did. No.
So I have just another question, Henry. There's a difference in the procedure with respect to administrative orders for disease or infested stock. In one case, you're allowing a verbal order to happen, but in the case of the administrative order, it has to all be in writing. They can't just call them and say, hey, by the way, you can't do that or whatever. Am I understanding the difference?
I guess my understanding was that there was an allowance for verbal as long as it was followed up with. So
Right.
they have to get written notice, which is making essentially the agency accountable for what they're ordering. But the verbal was to allow it to happen quicker. I don't know, like what's.
Right, I think that's there are instances where they want to go verbal because of the exigency, the need.
Okay.
And there are a couple of other instances in Title VI, and it's usually around disease, like animal disease. They can go in and, I don't know if y'all remember the scrapie outbreak, like almost 20 years ago. They went in and they're like, you just have to destroy these animals now. And then they followed it up with an administrative order.
Okay.
So,
And then there's just, effective dates. We heard from Jackie Folsom, lobbyist, from Vermont Fairs and Field Days. We talked to Mike O'Grady, talked to Steve Collier, the Assistant Director of Public Health and Ag Resources, the Section Chief for Weights and Measures. That was it.
questions?
Good work. Thanks.
Any big questions on the floor?
No. And then it went to Ways and Means because there was a thought, but I think the branding thing was because there was the little tiny bit of fees there that would not be getting.
Even though they haven't been
I
very.
I forget what it was like. I forget if it's like $30 for the program or something. So it was $90 in 10 years that they brought in or something. So,
Wow.
and I may not have those numbers exactly right, but I remember that's what Steven said, but, and then it went to approps because of the fairs, there's not actually an appropriation in there, but because of the,
underlying
Yeah.
law or something.
there was no questions, no concerns on the floor, it passed unanimously, so nothing too contentious.
Irene,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say you talked to beekeepers or just
We
someone
did.
representing them?
We didn't,
There's a lot of change in there.
yeah, we didn't hear anything, but we didn't take testimony from, beekeepers, just, that was an ask from the agency.
so you didn't hear from the beekeepers at all?
No,
We did. We talked to them for a while.
Yeah, maybe things got better or gotten better. Because last year, a lot of concerns.
I remember last year hearing a lot in our committee about it, but I think some of this stuff it's kind of a two-way street, you know, we're trying to protect them in a way as well, you know, maybe a little bit more work on their part in some instances, but the overall goal is to try to make it so it's better for bees, so we're not bringing in invasives or pests or all these things that should help everybody. Same with the nurseries, you know.
So besides this, did you report any of the other stuff that you guys put out, like?
No, 205 was the other one that was the agricultural grant program. That was Heather Supernaut reported that one. Trying to think what else we've.
Did you guys do meals?
Yeah, Universal School Meals, we did that one. That was Esme Cole and Mike Rice reported that one.
Yeah.
And
So in that, that all went well?
yeah, I mean, obviously School Meals was, you know, there was some questions on that, but it passed and went well. We felt like that was a good, well vetted. But I think, excuse me, the concern obviously there is the money aspect of it was the big piece, but we took a lot of testimony, did a lot of work on that. And then 205, that was an easy one that went through. The only change there was, we had originally asked, I think, for 500,000 in that, 250 in the base to keep going, and then one-time money of 250,000, and they didn't want to do any base funding because it's a new program, so they just bumped it to 350,000 one-time money, kind of treating it as a pilot, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm beginning to wonder when Michael O'Grady sleeps. The timestamp on this is 3:54 a.m. So you must have been up either really late or really early. And I'm wondering, it's still a draft bill, right? So has this already passed with a number?
It's got a number now.
Okay.
Were you working at that time, or
Oh.
did you just put the number in the corner so we think?
I think I mean, I work at 4 a.m. sometimes, so.
Is that because you couldn't sleep, or is that because
That's-
we should be on such off?
72.
Yeah.
Like today, I woke up and I realized that there was no way I was gonna be able to present and send in actual resources in a coherent way unless I had a PowerPoint. And so I woke up at 5, put a PowerPoint together. I'm still not sure I was coherent.
Good luck on the coherency.
Well, they wouldn't understand it. Either way, they weren't gonna understand it in English.
That came into my mind too. So
Anything else for Henry?
What's that?
472.
472, sorry. Oh, it was an easy change anyways. No other questions? Well, thank you, Henry.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks for your work. out
Yep.
here.
Well, give us a shout if you have any questions on on
Did-
any of it.
I noticed in the budget, there was 500,000 for Salvation Farms.
Yep,
Did you guys put that in?
I think that was an ask, yeah, from us.
Yeah.
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 And it was in our letter, I believe.
And working lands, all you only put $1 million in there, right?
Yeah, I forget if we asked for more, and Tristan talked to us about it the other day, Toledo. I can't remember what our letter said. I know we were trying to get as much as we could, but maybe they weren't. There seems to be a competing interests.
Boy, that's
So we didn't-
mildly.
We didn't get everything we wanted, but
What about conservation district?
They got.
I think they were funded.
$1 million in there, I
Yeah.
thought.
Okay.
Yeah, they were asking for like 6 and they got $1 million.
Yeah, they wanted 3 and I think they got 1.
I think they started with 6.
And they,
I think they started with 6 and then they went to 3 and they wound up with 1.
well, that's a lot better than a couple 100,000, which they
It was for a
were.
long time.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Henry.
Appreciate
All
it.
right, take care.
Michael, you put all this together, so, there any high points here that you need to fill us in on?
In 472.
Yes.
So I do want to go to the apiary sections. There are 2 significant changes there.
The fair stuff is all good.
I think the fair stuff is basically what has been implemented for the stipend. And they're just maybe formalizing it more now, developing a formula that looks at how many days you're open, what your capital needs are, how many people are going. But it still has that underlying provision that you can't get more, if you're a big fair, you can't totally dominate the funding process. And it ensures that those fairs that were previously funded through the stipend, even if they're not a 3-day fair anymore, maybe they're a 2-day fair, if they were getting funds previously, they can still get funds. You're not gonna basically shut down or kind of defund a fair because over the past few years it had to go from 3 to 2. So it's maintaining that equity, maintaining the funding of the fairs that it has funded, allows for funding new fairs. They meet the new conditions. I think I think the agency did a pretty good job of coming up with that language. There were some tweaks here and there in it, but other than that, I think it was a pretty fair proposal.
The meat section, did you put any of that together or?
The meat stuff, for the processing, that's just using the term that's now common in that chapter, because they're not just cutting, they're doing many other things as well. And then for weight and measures, I think the chair, you know that some of these devices, say like a truck weight, it's big. There are a lot of them. They also have their own industry standards. The lessor is going to potentially do maintenance on it. And the agency just has a lot of these things to look at. Every scanner, every scale. every gas pump. So they're looking for a longer period, provided that it doesn't go more than 24 months from the date of application.
So they have up to 2 years.
They have up to 2 years.
I would think with the technology that we have today, you know, these things stay up always pretty well.
Yeah, the agency will tell you stories about some of the scanners. It may not be the technology that's the issue there. It may be the establishment
Yeah.
that's the issue.
We did hear something about that from Steve, maybe,
So,
not coordinating the shelf deal with the
Right.
cash. They'll change the price in Timbuktu to change the cash register prices, but then the help in the store don't get the letter to go change the shelf prices. Yeah,
The livestock branding, I think Representative Pearl did a good job of explaining it. It's just not being used. Animal identification is being implemented through ear tags, RFID, and registration.
I didn't even know they had a branding law. We'd have done that in years ago if they had if we'd have known that. I can't imagine branding.
You can still brand if you want to,
Yeah, but we don't.
but you don't get to register and certify your brand with the agency.
Yeah. I haven't heard of by branding their animals. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing
Yeah.
to do.
I always think of it as like way out west.
Do you have any Farm Bureau members that brand?
None that I know of.
No, no, I don't. I mean, open range is when that's how they have to do it, because there's no fencing, no anything, and they separate them out at market time, but
I think some horse owners still do it for provenance reasons, like where, you know, their horses are and for breeding, subsequent breeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really all I know.
We tag cattle, that's it.
Tag cattle now with RFID, you get to scan them too.
Yeah.
So pretty soon they're gonna have their invisible fence collars also, so.
Makes me think of the Far Side cartoon where the guy has this horse belongs to, that's the brand. It's like this huge.
your chickens, you're gonna brand.
Where's
It's
the-
open range down there.
That's right,
Anyway.
that's why I keep losing them.
So then you come to the B sections. Many of the changes in the B sections are gender conformity changes requested by the agency. They would have ultimately been implemented by legislative council and the statutory revision process, but the agency requested them now. But there are some, I would say, two significant substantive changes. The first is on page 9. Right now, there's a requirement that, section on page 10, that prior to sale of bees, that it requires inspection once a summer, section on page 12,
So it goes,
section 11. And what they're requiring is, proposing is that prior to sale, within 45 days prior to sale, that the bees be inspected. And that's a disease mitigation control. They really want to make sure that what is moving in commerce is not have mites, doesn't have other disease, the bees are healthy. And that's established once in summer, 45 days prior to sale.
so is that within the 45-day period? That's 45 days is new.
Yeah, so 45 days is new, so if you want to sell, you have to have had your bees inspected within the previous 45 days. And so you're gonna have to get inspected more than once if you're gonna be selling over the course of the summer.
And that they sell bees all summer? I mean, I don't know much about bees.
We bought, I remember buying some hives in the Northeast Kingdom, yeah, in the summer. I don't remember it being a particular time of year, but I'm no expert.
I think they don't sell them in the winter, but they can sell them in the spring, summer, and fall.
So tell us a little bit about your buying. You bought a hive or two hives?
Yeah, I think it was 2 hives. I think it was from up somewhere around Island Pond.
Yeah, but how did you know they were for sale?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm just wondering
Yeah.
about the 45 days. Were
Yeah.
you just riding around and you saw?
No, it was something online. It was some kind of advertisement online.
Right, so,
Or it could, I'm sorry to interrupt, it could have been also through the local bee association in Bennington. They may have said a good spot is up in Island Pond. Could have been through that. I can find out.
but you have to register your apiaries.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna sell, you have to register that as well. So they're known if they're selling.
Well, you know, the only thing I was thinking is if you buy bees for pollinating,
Yeah,
you usually hire an owner that has many beehives and they move in but if you were a small producer of honey for yourself
yeah.
and you, for whatever reason, decide to sell them, you'd have to know you were gonna sell them like a month and a half ahead. To get them inspected, like if you wanted to buy my bees, I'd have to call ag 45 days ahead, have them inspected.
Yeah.
Then get the inspection report back. And it might be 2 months before the new owner could get the bees.
Well, think of it like this, it's like you need to have your stock inspected every 45 days, right? And in order to be selling.
Even in the winter.
Well, if you're probably not selling.
Right, you're not, so it's only when you're selling, okay.
And so it's an ongoing, just a health check of your stock to your hives, colonies in order to ensure that they're healthy and that they're suitable for sale.
Disease-free, yeah. So the bee people must already.
I think you should talk to some of them, like, I mean, the guy that I always think of is Chaz Mraz, because how can you forget that name? But they've got a significant business and they sell. Yeah. Chaz Mraz sells magical bees.
Where are they out of?
They're out of Addison.
Addison? Is that
Chaz Mraz and his magical bees. I can't believe that.
Oh, that's kind of fun.
Maybe we had him in on the screen last year.
Pretty sure he did.
So,
He's a good witness.
so Linda, you ought to get that name down. You already got it. That's, yeah, because you wouldn't want to mess them up on, just how you do it.
Right, and I think Chaz sells for medicinal use as well.
So I'm just wondering, the language only says you have to get it inspected. It doesn't say you have to have the report back within the 45
Right.
days. So could somebody as long as, say the inspector showed up 2 days before the 45 days is over, as long as it's been, as they've been inspected, could that person go ahead and sell? Even though doesn't have the results back yet?
I'm pretty sure that that's, if they've been inspected and the agency staff have signed off, they can sell.
Okay.
Well, we'll try to get him
Yeah.
on Zoom.
So he's Champlain Valley Orchards, or Champlain Valley Apiaries. And so I'm sure you've seen their honey. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
the
Yep.
white label with the green Vermont. State emblem on it. It's good stuff.
So that was the one significant change, right?
Well, that's the one, the other significant change relates to what the chair was just talking about the transport of bees for pollination. When you are going to transport bees into the state from out of state, they need a permit from the secretary, except if there's not an import permit required or a certificate of inspection required for bees, use equipment, or colonies that are registered in Vermont that were transported out of the state not more than 75 miles from the registered location of the bees or the owner, and are imported back into the state within 30 days of the original transport. So this was put into place, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. And it was Representative Norris in House Ag, because Addison County, he knew some of the apiaries there were providing pollination services to orchards in New York, and didn't want to have them to have to get an import permit to come back into the state. After, they were registered in Vermont, they were moved less than 75 miles and they come back. The agency still wants to get rid of that exception. They think that if they're going that far, up to 75 miles, they still could be encountering disease or parasites that are not present in Vermont and then bringing them back into Vermont. So they want an import permit for those bees to re-enter.
But do you get an inspection with that?
Generally, yes.
Because what good would it do to pay a fee, but if you didn't have them inspected to know if they were healthy or?
So on page 14, line 12, you see the secretary shall not approve the import of bees, use equipment, or colonies from out of state unless accompanied by a valid certificate of inspection within the previous 45 days in the state or country of origin, stating that the bees, etc., are free from bee disease. So you needed that inspection to go back in.
But if it's under 75 miles, you don't?
Well, right now, you don't need to.
No.
If you're registered, you're the apiary and you're registered in Vermont, you're moving those bees less than 75 miles and you bring them back into the state within 30 days of the original transport out of state, you don't need a permit and you don't need a certificate of inspection.
So, yeah.
And they want to repeal
So
it.
would they, yeah, and you go back to this, well, there's gotta be a reason. Somebody must have brought back a disease or something, or why would they? I guess you'll have to ask the bee guys.
But yeah, I mean, I can't remember her name, but the person over there that runs the bee program, I think she's pretty well respected.
Yeah, some other guy in also at
We
one
did.
point, yeah, about a month and a half ago, he seemed good. The guy that had just moved up from down south, was it?
Are you talking about Steve, does the pesticide?
Oh, maybe he was the pesticide guy. He was
He
also
moved
talking
up- he
about,
moved to
Yeah.
Florida.
he was also talking about, apiaries, I thought, or the connection,
Right,
maybe.
with, you know, they're gonna-
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah, the bee guy from
Florida.
Yeah. That's pretty bad. You have to go to Florida to get somebody to check your bees. Well, maybe we better,
Just Nebraska.
yeah, tell us some more of that, because I would think if you stayed within a range of, I mean, the water is. Yeah, I must have been here, but I don't remember the reason why we.
So Brooke Decker is who you want to talk to. Brooke Decker.
And
She's the pollinator health staff at the Agency of Agriculture.
well,
I
I'd
know.
rather talk to a beekeeper.
Yeah, the reason was, if I remember that, as Michael mentioned, at the time Representative Norris, the 75 miles fit into what that situation in Addison County was doing. In other words, it could have been 100 if it was a little bit further in or out. But I think the 75 miles dovetailed with what was actually happening with some of the apiaries in Addison County, if I remember right. Because I remember putting that in.
But if you,
So there's no magic about 75 miles. It could be
I
50.
mean, I don't know how far bees fly, but you get down to the narrow end of Lake Champlain,
You know?
couldn't bees fly across the New York?
I don't know either, I guess.
Sure, right.
And I mean, the Connecticut rivers is wide in some spots as Lake Champlain is way down. They could fly over to New Hampshire and anyway, we'll get somebody in that knows something about it. I mean, we don't want to bring diseases in.
Right,
But on the other hand, we don't wanna have to hire a crew over there to go and inspect bees.
So bees are known to fly as far as 8 miles.
8 miles.
That's what.
I'm glad you've
You
got
should,
that.
they should be able to, get across the lake.
Yeah.
So Brooke Decker was in here on February 10th,
Yeah,
so we've seen her once. She's been here once today, this session.
she say anything about bees?
Well, apparently.
But we know now from Richie that they can go 8 miles on their own.
Up 8 miles. There's not a lot of the lake down near you that they couldn't get across.
No.
Okay, so we'll check that language out.
So, and then on page 17, section 17, the soil amendments. You may remember a couple of years ago, you started registering certain products that were not your traditional soil amendments. And at the same time, you were doing the animal health supplements, remember the kicking chicken, vitamins and
Yep.
all that stuff.
Like kicking chicken.
Kicking chicken,
Is that it? Do I kick a chicken or?
it's basically vitamins for your
They get high too.
and,
Beef jerky.
Brian's, did
and
you use that?
Do you use kicking chicken? Do you kick your chickens?
when is the committee on committees meeting?
so,
You're gonna kick those chickens too?
so one of the things that kind of fell between the cracks is whether or not the products that are marketed for like hydroponics are be registered as soil amendments because they're not being used in soil. But they are being used for basically fertilizer or other benefits for the growing of crops. And that whole program is the consumer protection program to ensure that what is being sold actually has in it what is marketed to have, and that is not something that the consumer is being defrauded about. And so the agency wants to make sure that they have regulatory authority over those products that are being used for horticultural growing, including hydroponic.
So should that be separate from soil amendments to keep it clear, or does that blend, do you feel it blends in? here
I think
okay?
it blends in. If you don't incorporate it into soil amendments, you have to make probably like 50 to 60 changes.
Oh,
Because the term soil, if you're gonna have a new term, then
you have to chase it.
you'd have to chase it all through the statute. And it's not a long statute, but it maybe 15 sections. And so you have to make changes in 15 sections.
So you feel it fits in?
I
here,
think
okay.
it works.
Yeah. Any other questions on this section?
Then you get into the nursery sections. The first change is the agency has requested that those persons who are in the business of selling, installing, or distributing nursery stock be registered as a nursery dealer. And that is the big change is installing. So if you are holding yourself out as a business that installs nursery stock for compensation, you will need to now get a certificate, a nursery license from the agency.
And that's new.
That is new, the installing. And the House Committee wanted to be clear about what installing is. You see that on page 18, slide 11. It's placing, fixing, or planting of nursery stock in the ground or soil. It does not mean delivery of nursery stock to a purchaser or the placing of potted nursery stock within a structure or its curtilage of the purchase.
It's like for trees,
Yeah,
shrubbery.
right. But if you go to your local nursery and you say, I want you to deliver 15 flats of flowers, can you just leave it by my garage? That doesn't necessarily require that person that's delivering it to have a nursery license. Now, where you bought it from,
They
have to have.
I wonder what the purpose of that is.
I'm trying to figure it out too. Are there separate companies that only install but don't necessarily?
There are companies that do not raise nursery stock, but are in the business of installing.
landscape.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
landscape.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they have those big pointed diggers on the back of their trucks, and they dig the hole, then they go get the tree.
And up until now, they wouldn't have been included.
I know there's a big one up in Morrisville that does that kind of work on Route 100. Green Mountain.
Yeah, it's right on the boundary and stuff.
Yeah.
Right there, just on the worst.
Well, maybe we should ask why they feel that the installer needs to have a license.
Yeah, I don't understand. Unless there's a problem that this is trying to solve, why would we need to drag another bunch of people into? I don't know.
Should I move on?
Yeah, you didn't hear anything on that.
I just remember from Steve's, I think it was Steve's original testimony on it, it said that they are an entity where the product can still transmit the disease. They're in the business of they might buy a bunch of nursery stock, store it in their warehouse, keep it there for a while, and then go and install it. And there's opportunity for disease or pestilence to occur in that timeline for these businesses, and so they want them to be licensed.
We'll get him or somebody in on that. It's a rig, that outfit up in Morrisville, I almost think you have to have your tree. So you buy a tree from Joe Blow, they want to get rid of. So you hire them, they go to come to we go look at the tree. And they figure out how big the base has to be to get the roots. They dig the hole at my house with that rake. Then they go get the tree.
From the nursery. Where's the tree coming from?
Well, maybe
Anywhere.
yeah, and they put it in the ground.
Yeah.
And do the
Yeah.
But will.
But think of it like this: there's a pest infestation that's affecting nursery stock, and the agency is concerned about how that infestation will affect native stocks and native forests. And they go out and they're gonna inspect every place that is in possession of this nursery stock or is selling this nursery stock. They don't know where to go if the installer has purchased a bunch of that infested stock, right? How do they know where to go
To address the problem.
to address the issue?
The center store, I think you have the nurseries coming in tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Maybe some info.
Yeah, we.
And when they register, is there a fee or they just register?
No, there's a license fee. It's $60 if the nursery owns or controls a nursery of 1/2 acre or more, greenhouse space of 25,000 square feet or more, retail space of 25,000 square feet or more. It's $30 for all of the nursery dealers.
So the installer would be,
$30. The next major change is section 20 on page 19. This is basically the ability for them to issue their stop sale or destroy orders verbally, and then to issue a written warning as soon as possible. And then you move into the pest survey, page 21, section 21. This is for the administrative orders, the stop sale orders shall be in writing, include the reasons, description of the articles that issue, any instructions to separate, and appeal rights. You can't remove your stop sale tags unless the secretary approves. And then section 22, I think Henry did a great job of explaining that. There is authority for a person whose plants are ordered to be destroyed to seek compensation from the agency. It's just not happening the agency isn't compensating for destruction, and so the agency is proposing just to strike it. Nurseries can get insurance, and in some cases can get crop insurance from the feds. So, you know, if you were in the business of a nursery, you likely should have insurance for.
Yeah. Other questions in regards to or 72? No? Well, thank you. The committee, you want to take a break yet, or? Well, we got one set for 10:30, so that's halfway through. So maybe we can get through the draft that Michael has put forth.
It's 5.1, is that use for the farm?
Yeah.
Okay. You should have that on your website or a
Yeah.
copy in front of you. It's draft 5.1, March 29th, 8:10 a.m. time. As you requested yesterday, this draft focuses solely on a required mediation requirement. It does not change the standard for right to farm. It does not change whether it's an agricultural activity. It changes nothing in the underlying right to farm and right to farm standards. It does provide that a person shall not bring a court action based on a claim of nuisance, just on nuisance, arising from an agricultural activity unless a person and the operator of the agricultural activity at least once attempt to resolve through mediation the issue or disputes that the person has concerning the operation of the agricultural activity. Mediation is conducted according to the Uniform Mediation Act. The party to the mediation may agree upon the use of a mediator to assist in the resolution of the agreed upon issue, and the party shall share the cost of the mediator. Parties to the mediation are unable to resolve the relevant issue through mediation. They may agree, it's not required, to binding arbitration. And that person bringing a court action based on a claim of nuisance shall provide the court with a sworn statement of an intent to resolve the issue or dispute through mediation. The act will take effect July 1, 2023.
Comment?
Yep, as well drafted, Michael, that's pretty much what we hope for, I think. I'm just curious if there's a way to track this. In other words, and I don't know who would be responsible or where it would go, but if you and I, if you're the landowner and the farmer, and we go to Senator Westman, he's our negotiator or whatever, mediator, and we agree, nobody else is gonna ever know that, right? I mean, it doesn't have to go anywhere else. If we don't agree and it results in a court action, then obviously that's a different situation and there's a way to become aware of that, but.
I mean, you could put in a notice requirement to the agency. Notice of attempt to resolve the issue.
I don't know if it's a good or bad idea. I'm just kind of wondering. It'd be nice to know whether
Well,
this
how many
worked.
cases there are?
Yeah.
too.
It was get some statistics on it.
Is that mediator's responsibility, maybe if they're hired to do that?
That's a good question. We would, I think it would be on the plaintiff. The person alleging indigent harm. But that's probably who it should be on.
Be helpful to have the number.
Well, it'd be helpful to have the whole bill that we put together. We might not have so many mediations. Maybe that would be most helpful. But I don't can you require somebody to report that,
Well, you require notice of,
I-
you require notice of a ton of activities.
are there,
Just so you didn't know about
if they
this.
were a mediators association or something like that, but I mean, I don't even know if they have to register with anybody.
Well,
Do they have to register with the Secretary of State?
To be a mediator?
Yeah.
Good question.
I don't think they technically do. There are association of mediators. Some of the courts have approved mediators. The environmental division has a list of approved environmental mediators. There's bankruptcy mediators that are approved. I mean, there are different categories of mediators that get approved. Remember, under the Uniform Mediation Act, you basically have to be holding yourself out as a business of mediation.
Do you have to have a license?
No, because attorneys can be mediators as well.
Brian, you had a.
I was just thinking, so there is some kind of professionalization of it. You have to be certified possibly, or,
I don't think you need to be certified, but I can look into that. I can track that.
If there was a license or something where,
we knew who they were out there.
yeah, and then they could, if it was through the Secretary of State's office or OPR or,
Yeah.
then we could have them, not register, but send in if they had a particular case like this.
Okay. I will track that down.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to know, that's all. If this works out and say there's 5 cases and 4 of them got solved way before, you'd have a pretty good feeling that that's a pretty good way to do things. I don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do. This is good mediation.
Provided we can pass it.
Well, it'd be nice to, I mean, we don't even know really how many cases there have been for nuisance suits other than Digger digging up, some now and then.
So I don't think there's any special qualification to be a mediator in Vermont, but if you want to be a mediator for the judiciary, then you have to qualify. You have to do 100 hours. Certain mediators have to do 100 hours of training.
So, if you wanted to check that out for us, Michael, and if there are different avenues of chasing these folks down.
It may be that you want a mediator to be certified by the environmental division, because if nuisance is really an environmental action. And so you have somebody that has experience with environmental issues.
Yeah.
Are there?
Well, it could be an agricultural issue that the plaintiff doesn't understand.
Right. So there's 6 pages of certified environmental division.
So,
I
I was afraid you were gonna say just the opposite, actually.
mean, what if you had a dispute over the fence line?
There's 24 registered environmental division mediators.
wouldn't be bringing a nuisance suit, it would be a civil.
Many of them are, or some of them, I should say, are attorneys, but some of them are not. Like Cindy Cook, she's out. She does a lot of EPA mediation that I've been involved in it. So she's a mediator. It's on here. Emily Gould's on here. Barry Lawson. I mean, these are people that are known.
They're being used right now.
All right, yeah,
So, and we, unless we survey them, we really don't know.
But both parties have to agree to
yes.
the mediator, so if it goes to mediation and one side or the other doesn't agree on the mediator, they find it difficult.
Because the bill doesn't call for them to use a certified mediator, it just says mediator. I could put a sign up on my door, I'm now a mediator, come on in, let's talk.
Yes.
Well, you do mediate every hockey game, don't you? Yeah, you're a mediator.
Yeah, I guess.
Sidekick for you.
I get paid enough.
So you'll check that out, Michael, and we'll see what you come back.
Okay.
Is there any comment from people in the room in regards to either of the issues that we dealt with?
Jared Carpenter, Lake Champlain Committee, it does seem to make sense if there's a way to sort of track, for lack of a better word, is the measure successful? I mean, like you said, it works 4 out of 5 times and doesn't go to court. The parties solve their differences. Remember that there might not be a practical way of tracking. So, but otherwise, we're in favor of the language change.
Emma Schuldice from Ontario Producers Alliance. We as well would like to just see, is it 100 mediations? Is it 2 mediations?
Right.
And where do they resolve? Because right now it seems as if things could be getting settled and no one knows about it. You know, it could be a neutral neighbor who's mediating it. It could be, we don't know. So to get some more answers, to see what we're dealing with throughout the state seems like the best option for all.
Well, hopefully we'll get there. Yeah. Anything else from Michael? No. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Gus coming in.
Yep. I'd probably want to move out if I could around 11:15. There's a bunch of folks coming to Lieutenant Governor's office on that library issue.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a press conference that I should be at 11:30.
Library is awesome.
No,
So I'm probably gonna go to the Lieutenant Governor's office too.
Yeah. You had a question before. I don't mean to put you
Oh,
on the
no,
spot.
that's fine. Clarification on the organic piece.
Yeah.
Are we capturing those that are going out in 2022 are still gonna get payment, or is it just those in operation still today?
And I couldn't remember which way. it
Is
went.
those that were, they had to be in operation by the end of 22.
Okay.
So it's the opposite of what you told you.
So if, say you had a herd that you dried off,
Well, and
you know, some farmers
Yeah.
have heard that they dry their herd off in November or something like that. But they're still in business, they would qualify.
Okay.
But if they sold their cows in November or
July.
Then they're,
I thought. And is there a time that we're gonna make this bill, like, is it gonna be on passing? Just curious for
we,
dairy farmers
we
asking.
talked in approach about having it take effect upon passage. And that's where it'll get dealt with.
Okay.
So. The big issue on that whole deal is the feds have $100 million, and you sat through some of that testimony with John Roberts.
Yes.
He said, like, he might know something. So next week, we'll have John back on Zoom, see if they have found out anything. But with what we know about that money, is that would equal out to about, if they did it on a per hundredweight basis nationwide, it would end out at about $2 a hundredweight. Well, we aren't gonna give somebody a premium for, because they had a little rough time. We just want to try to make them whole.
Okay.
So if we could, there's only so much money in the kitty. Well, if we could save $2 a hundredweight or $1.50 a hundredweight on what we have to pay, it would leave more money in the pot, maybe to do working lands or some other ag thing that we would really like to get done. So, and we aren't in approach, we aren't done doing testimony yet from the different agencies. And so next week, we're gonna work starting Monday to try to get all that wrapped up, and then we can go to work on getting them. Did I miss something, Rich? But it would, we've got, like, Salvation Farms that would like $500,000, and we got, a fencing, Ag Tech would like to get into doing some electronic fencing, and so we've got several issues hanging out there that
I wasn't really clear about all of the ads that the House added into the budget.
yeah,
Because they're different. And maybe it's something later because we're going through the one-time list, but I really don't get the difference between what they added and what the agency was asking for.
well, they put $5 million in for the agency of new money, for those three things, forestry and.
Yeah, and the agency was asking for 10. But there's a bunch of other, and then working lands was a different number.
Yeah.
You know, but they broke stuff out in a way that I wasn't exactly sure what all of it meant.
Yeah.
Well, their chair's coming in tomorrow, right? We can ask Heather. Maybe she has a spreadsheet or something that she can give us of the differences. Is that possible?
Joint fiscal would do.
They see that.
So anything else? No? Well, we'll take a break and Gus will be here at